Hey, so in this video, I want to talk about painting light and shadow, just how it works in general, just like that kind of stuff. I'm not editing this in any way. I'm just kind of speaking over me drawing, so it's gonna be a bit messy and a bit messed up at times, but just bear with me. I try my best. Uh, I see a lot of times when people draw light and shadow, there's some things missing and some things that's not quite right, and I kind of just want to go over it a little bit in this video. Just what I know, um, what and I just share some knowledge, sharing some knowledge. Let's go. All right. So just to start off, simply, I'm gonna paint like I'm gonna paint a sphere with just a basic light setup and just kind of demonstrate or try to demonstrate how light works. So light, let's see. All right, so light is dependent on the surface, the angle of the surface. So if the surface is facing directly towards the light source, then it's gonna be the brightest, and as the surface starts to face away from the light source, then it starts to darken until it's facing completely away from the light source, in which case it's in shadow. So if we imagine on this, we've got a light source coming in here from the top right, like this. So it's coming, it's hitting the sphere here. Imagine this is a cross section for now. It might be easier to understand, but yeah, we've got the light source coming in from the top right. So all this area of the sphere is going to be hit by light. Here we go. All this. So all of this. Let me change my color to red. All of this area here will be hit by light. But once it gets to this point here, the light passes and it's not going to be hitting the surface of the sphere anymore. So all of this part is going to be in shadow. So what we can do with this now is this is where basically the shadow line of this sphere will be if I light it. So I'm just going to paint in here. This is going to be the shadow area here. Alright, and this top side here is going to be hit by light. So you can see we have one lit side of a sphere and one shadow side of a sphere, like so. Now, yeah, so this is the max intensity of the light that I've set. So the color of this sphere is this gray on the light side. So this is the brightest it's going to get without being overlit. So here, as this surface moves away from the light source, it's going to start going into shadow around here. So I'm just going to paint in here, kind of slightly darker tones. Only in the light source, only in the light section. It won't ever go darker than the shadow section. Just remember that. So this here is just a kind of basic lit sphere, pretty standard, nothing special. But we are going to add some stuff to this to make it look a bit more fancy. So we've got our light side. We've got our. Let me go over the names of this. So this is actually, I'll do that afterwards. So we've got our lit side, our dark side, and this section in the middle is called halftones, but don't worry about that. So this is what this sphere would look like if it was just floating in nothing, but we're not gonna have that. We're gonna add some floor onto this. So I'm gonna add a backdrop. Like this. So this is the backdrop. I'm gonna paint the backdrop in black. Oh man, hold on. Just fill in this. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna paint the backdrop in a dark black color, like that. And the floor is gonna be kind of a lighter grey, like that. Great, awesome, wonderful. I didn't want to do that. Alright, so we got this, right? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add some bounce light onto this. So just remember where the light source is coming from. It's coming from here, so if I put just like a little mini sun looking thing over there. So this is where the light source is coming from, and it's coming down and it's hitting diagonally. So bounce light is essentially when the light will hit the surface and it will just bounce back up, bounce off the surface, and it always bounces off the same angle. So in this case the floor is just flat like this. It will bounce off at this angle, the same angle to what it's hitting the surface at. So oh yeah, also bounce light hits most of the time. Bounce light is it's less intense than the main light because it will hit the surface. Some of the light will be absorbed into the surface depending on like what color it is, and some will be reflected off, and they will be reflected off most of the time in kind of a diffuse way, so it will be scattered around everywhere. It won't just cleanly bounce off, so it will be dimmer. So on this we're going to paint some bounce light, which is going to be, I don't know, like just not as bright as this area up here. So like this. Right, so the light is coming down from here, hitting the surface and bouncing back up and lighting the underside of this sphere just a little bit. Alright, so the next thing is we're going to add a shadow, a car shadow onto this. So there's ways to figure out where car shadows are, how like the length of them. I guess I could kind of try and demonstrate it here. So the light's coming down from this angle here, and this is where the base of the sphere is. So if we draw a line out from the sphere and draw this line down straight to here, this is the length. This can be the length of the car shadow. So yeah, and obviously it's going to be a spherical shape, circular shape on the ground. So yeah, just simple car shadow right there. Nothing. I'm not really trying to make it look super neat or anything. I'm just kind of trying to get my point across. But yeah, we've got car shadow right there. Pretty simple. And then the final pass for now, ambient occlusion or occlusion shadows. So if I can demonstrate this with some kind of diagram, occlusion shadows are basically when two surfaces get close together like this. So imagine this is a cross section again of like maybe a folded piece of paper or something. When two surfaces get close together like this, light will come in and bounce around, and obviously each time the light bounces it gets dimmer, so some light will be absorbed into this, and then a kind of dimmer light will be bounced up onto this section. Some light will be absorbed up here, and it just keeps going, gets dimmer, 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 till eventually no light can reach into these areas. So that's what occlusion shadow is basically. That's the science behind it, at least. So if we apply that onto this amazing looking ball, occlusion shadow would be here, where the base of this sphere is touching the ground underneath it. So here there'd be a lot darker. This is darker than the shadow value. Here there'd be a darker value going on here underneath this sphere, and on the shadow as well there'd be some occlusion shadows going on there. And yeah, that's basically it. That's all the passes, at least all the different passes that you need to know for when it comes to painting light. So if we go over that just briefly again, so we got, let me get my red brush, bright red, awesome. So we got the light here, this is all light. So light. Here we got shadows, so all this shadow, like that. And then we got our cast shadow here, cast shadow. We got our bounce light here, so this is bounce light. And we've got our ambient occlusion, our occlusion shadows. Occlusion, if I'm spelling this right, I'm not sure if it has two C's in it. Occlusion shadow. So these are the main 5 passes that you want to do when you paint light. Now there's also highlights as well. That's also a thing, but they don't work the same as normal light, so I'll go over that later on in the video. Just stick around. Alright, so we've got this. Come on. Cool. I'm just gonna make it a bit more fancy looking. I'm gonna add some stuff on the floor, because why not? Some stuff here, bit of shadow back here. Alright, so we got this, and that's all well and good, but how do we apply this to characters, or whatever it is that you're drawing? Could be characters, could be environments, assets, vehicles, whatever, right? So I'm going to demonstrate with characters, because it's pretty much the only thing I can do, you know. But yeah, so we got this. This is the basic light setup that we got going on. So give me 1 second. Alright, so we got this guy here, this dude. Let's move that there. Alright. So we got this guy, and we want to paint light onto this face. So we're gonna do it the same way as we painted this sphere. Pretty simple when you think about it. Nothing really too special. So we start start by doing is just painting in. Let me just group this. Alright. So we'll start by painting in the local value, and the local value is the value of the object without shadows. So this is basically the object of full light without over exposure light, intense light, or whatever. So I'm just gonna choose this kind of grey, because actually I go a bit lighter, like that. And I'm gonna like actually, yeah, whatever. I'll paint the hair as well. So the hair's gonna be the darker black hair. Just kind of really quickly, because this isn't like a finished, a full image or anything. I'm just showing an example. Great, wonderful. So we got that. Now the next step would be to paint in the shadows. So you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you take the time to figure out the main light and shadows before you do any kind of detailing or refinements or anything. It's really important, trust me. So I'm just gonna do a basic light setup for this one. This is the one that I commonly use for my characters. It's kind of like a studio light setup. So there'd be one main light, which is basically like a big square of light that would be like shining down. Not from this angle, but I'll just demonstrating. There'd be a big square of light shining down, and there'd be like a backdrop to like maybe white backdrop or black backdrop to kind of add some diffuse light around, and there'd be actually a diffuse light on the side. So yeah, so we want to paint in the main shadow. So the light source I'm going to set to up here. It's going to be in front of him, slightly above. So like here. And it can be a good idea to label your light source, because you might occasionally run into the problem where you'll forget where the light source is, and it can mean that you start painting different areas with a different light source, and it can start to mess up your image a bit. So I mean, if you can always keep track of where your light source is, then it's fine, but if not, then it's a good idea to just put a little something to tell you. So the light source comes from the front and slightly above, maybe a little bit to the right. So I'm going to start by painting in the main shadows here. A few ways to think about this. The first one is, if you imagine just kind of a really basic shape for this face, so maybe it'd be like a cube or something, or sphere, cylinder, and you just kind of block it in like that, and then gradually add detail. So if this was a sphere or a cylinder or a cube, then it'd be like all this area would be in shadow, this area would be in shadow, and then you gradually add the details, like here under the mouth would be in shadow, under the nose, under the eyes. That's one way. Another way to think about it is to just split everything up into planes, and this is the way I use. If you mentally in your mind split everything up into planes, so for example, if we do the nose here, so kind of like if it was a 3D model and you could see all the polygons on it, something like that. So this plane is facing more, this plane here is facing more towards the light than this plane here, so this plane would be more in, well, it's still getting hit by the light, but Yeah, okay, well, don't worry about that. It's still getting hit by the light. So we only want to do the planes that aren't getting hit by the light. So if we did here under the chin, there'd be a plane here that'd be in shadow. Here would be in shadow. If we did it on the eyes, that'd be in shadow. You know, just try and as best you can map out the main light and shadows of whatever it is you're painting. And just remember, like here, it's any surface that's facing away from the light is in shadow. Any surface that's not getting hit by light. So I'm actually thinking that maybe this part of the eye, so the brow line here would actually be in light, and this part would be in shadow instead. And then we start kind of going into some smaller details, like around the mouth here. Top lip would be in shadow, facing away from the light. Maybe there'd be a bit here. Right, no, we'll worry about that later. That's half light. This bit would be in shadow, all this area under here. Alright, so we got that. Now we want to add the half light. The half light is the darker tones in the light areas. So when you're doing the half tones, you want to make sure that you don't go a darker value than your shadow tones. Otherwise, you start like messing up the form, and it reads as shadows. So here would be half tones. Under the eyes a bit, maybe here. Here. Oh, sorry, don't need to flip the canvas, not today. Here, half tones. Alright, that's looking alright as far as that goes. So yeah. So to do that, what we did next on here was the cast shadow. So on the face, it's kind of difficult because there's not really much to the cast shadow. The only parts really is under the nose here. We would cast a shadow, and the cast shadow is the same value as your shadow tones. So it's mainly under the nose. Depending on where the light source is, you might get a cast shadow under the eyes. And under the neck, usually there's a cast shadow. But yeah, I don't most see in shadow anyway at the moment in this example, so don't need to worry about that. So yeah, we got that. And then the next step was to add the bounce light. So you don't necessarily have to add bounce light to everything, but it does make it look a lot more realistic in some ways. So if we imagined the bounce light or just a secondary light, I'm going to imagine a secondary light because that's what I usually use. So a secondary light coming from actually, let's say the light's bouncing from the floor, so that's kind of our secondary light. So the light's coming down from here, and off camera, you know, hits the floor, bounces back up, and hits the underside of his face. So I usually add the secondary light to the other side, from where the light source is. So you'd have it kind of under here, underneath the chin would be maybe a bit of bounce light, underneath the nose definitely. Yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest. You get it underneath the eyes, but I don't know. So even things like if he was wearing a shirt, let's say if he was wearing a shirt like a white shirt here, then the light would come down, hit this part of his shirt, and bounce back up, and cast bounce light underneath his face here as well. So we've got that, and then we have ambient occlusion shadows. So usually add occlusion shadows places like underneath the neck, around the eyes, around the nose, around here, these parts of the mouth. Including shadows would be in the ears as well. Just any areas that you'd think that light wouldn't like reach. Alright, so that's pretty much that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then I mean I didn't do the hair, but you could add shadow to the hair. You know, same thing, and the eyes, whatever. So yeah, that's basically the basis of lighting. So I'm gonna move this over here for a sec. And now I shall go over highlights. Or should I? No, okay. I'm gonna do like one more example first, and then I'll go over highlights. So I'm gonna paint this one in a different light setup, because why not? So this one we're gonna go for lights coming from here. So kind of like the front, from underneath to the right, to the left. So like there. So same deal, same thing. Just make sure you plot out the main light and shadows. So all this would be in shadow. This side of the nose would be in shadow. Probably, actually, this whole side of the face would be in shadow. It's like that. Only this side of the face is being lit. All this would be in shadow. Top side of the lip here would probably be in shadow. Here. There might be a bit of light coming through here, around this area of the mouth. Some shadow here, shadow here, here. Alright, and most of the hair will be in shadow as well, so I'm going to paint that darker grey. This ears in shadow. All this in shadow. Alright, wonderful. So this is lit from this angle, coming up from this side of the face. So same thing again. I've actually already added the half lights in most of the places. So there'll be a half light there. Yeah, there's not really a lot of places to add that kind of stuff here, so I'm just going to leave it at this for now. So another thing, if we were to imagine that there wasn't as much diffuse light going around here, so in which case the shadows would be a lot darker. So we're gonna kind of try a different light setup here. So maybe can I change it in adjustments? Yeah, kind of. All right, so we're just making the shadow darker. See where this goes. So in this case here, I'd say that this area all around here looks kind of flat and boring. So I personally at least would add some kind of, even like just the faintest secondary light source. Just to kind of make this bit a bit more like stuff's happening over here on the dark side of the face. Right. So next step, occlusion shadows. So same deal. We wouldn't really change much from this because it's not as much where the light's here, and it's just where the light isn't going to reach. So here, even still under the neck, that'd be occlusion shadows. Because where two surfaces are going to meet, where two surfaces get close together, you get occlusion shadows. So you're still under the nose. Under this part of the mouth here a bit. So we got that, and then that was it, wasn't it? So yeah, that's this light setup. Yeah. So I mean, once you've kind of planned all of this stuff out, you can obviously go in and refine it, add more details, clean it up a bit. But this is just for an example. So I'm just gonna kind of leave it at this. I'm not gonna spend the time to clean it up just yet. So yeah, let me talk about highlights now. So highlights, they don't work the same as regular or as normal light. So imagine we had another. Here we go. Imagine we had another sphere here, another ball, and imagine it's a cross section again. We have the same light setup as before. So light's coming in from the top right, coming straight down diagonally like this. So there we go. And now imagine this is the eye. This is where we're looking, right? Some weird ass eye over here. Yeah, boy. Super anime. Right, great. So this is where the camera is. This is where the eye is looking at this object. So it's pretty much straight on looking at the object like this. So the highlight is, hold on, let me get rid of this just so I got my space. The highlight is where, oh, it's kind of difficult to explain. It's where the reflected light meets the eye on the object. So the light is coming down like this, like great. So these light rays are gonna reflect off of this circle at different angles. So this one here, if we draw the tangent on the circle, here, this light ray should reflect, it will reflect around this direction. So this light ray will come down, bounce off in this direction, and so all of these here as well will just kind of go off. This one is not even reflecting, so yeah. So, okay, if we do that for all of these, just so I can kind of show how this works, because it's really difficult to explain. This one will come down here. So at some point, you can see where all these light rays are kind of bouncing off. This one's coming up this direction, this one's coming up in this direction, this one's coming down in this direction here. At some point, there's going to be a light ray that bounces off this object and goes straight into the camera or the viewer's eye. And at that point on the object is where the highlight will appear. So if we try and figure that out, so we can see that this one's coming too high up above the camera, and this one's going too low. So it's going to be somewhere in between these two. So if we try this here, draw a tangent on this circle. So yeah, here we go. It's kind of like maybe a bit lower, but yeah, you get the idea. Kind of like here. So if we were to move this light ray down just a little bit, sorry, I just want to get it right. There. That's where this light ray comes down, bounces off the sphere. Let me get my red up again. This light ray here comes down, bounces off, and goes straight into the viewer's eye or the camera. So at this point here on this sphere, that's where the highlight will appear. So if we were to imagine, I can't really show it because I have to reposition the camera and everything, but if we were to imagine that this was a 3D object and the light source is coming from this direction here, this is where the highlight will appear. So I mean, if you're following this, then well done. It's kind of difficult to explain. I'm very sorry, but yeah. So if we were to draw a highlight on here, on this ball that we drew earlier, and the light's coming from this direction, you need to imagine at what point on this object the light ray will bounce off and into the camera, into like where we're looking at this object from. So my guess, I usually just guess it's quite like randomly, but I'd say it would be around there. This highlight. So the light comes down here, bounces off this area, and would come into, like, you know, into the camera. Kind of difficult to draw an arrow towards the camera, but yeah, it goes into the camera. With highlights as well, you might get a kind of a gloss around it. So maybe it's like the airbrush, kind of go around it a little bit, and give it a bit more of a highlight. Highlights can also change depending on the material of the object. So if you've got a super shiny object, so if we're imagining that this this ball is kind of glossy, then the highlight would appear something like this, really sharp. There won't be much blur around it. But if this was a matte surface, then the highlight would start to diffuse. So it would spread out like that, and the highlight would actually not be as bright. It would be darker, and you could just like blend it out. So that's where the highlight, what the highlight would look like on a matte surface, but we want it to be super shiny because shiny things are cool. So yeah, that's the highlight. So if we add that one to the diagram, because why not? Here we got the highlight. Great. So that's those are all the things pretty much that you want to be thinking about. I'm gonna get rid of this because it's kind of messy, but you get the idea. So if we want to add highlights onto this character, then it's the same deal. Obviously the surface of skin isn't really that glossy unless you're sweating. This character is not sweating, so we're gonna kind of put a dull down highlights. So you kind of get used to putting them in specific places once you do it a few times. So I usually put like maybe a highlight here on the cheeks, maybe on the forehead, because I mean, if you're doing exercise or something, then your forehead is the main part that sweats. So maybe put a bit of highlight on the forehead. And people have shiny noses for some reason, so usually there's quite a harsh highlight on the nose here. But yeah, that's pretty much how highlights work. So that's pretty much it. That's the main the main things to think about when you're painting light. There's a few other things I want to quickly go over. Just like a few really specific circumstances and situations, and how to like paint them. Oh yeah, highlight on the eye as well. Same thing. Like light's coming down, bouncing off the eye. The eye is super shiny, so you get a sharp highlight coming into the camera. So I just want to quickly go over this just randomly because I think it might be of some use. When you're painting bevels, so say you've got this. Say you got this. Imagine this is a cross section again of a shape, and you've got a corner here and the corner bevels like this, right? And the light's coming down from here like this. This is the part that's going to get hit by the most light when you think about it, right? Because this surface, this area here is actually facing directly towards the light. This area is not facing directly towards the light. The light's hitting this surface at an angle, so it's gonna be darker than this area here. So if we were to draw that out just quickly, and this is beveled, and paint that. So this is all being hit by the light, but this these side surfaces are being hit at an angle, so the light won't be as intense. But this area here is where most of the light is gonna hit here. So it's gonna be the brightest part, and this is how you kind of this is why you get these highlights in these kind of beveled areas, and this is like how you show it. I just kind of wanted to go over that because I've seen like people they'll actually paint these areas in darker just because it's like it's kind of in a crevice, and they'll literally do the other way around, so they'll make this beveled area darker, and it's like, oh man, doesn't look right. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. Alright, so I quickly wanted to go over one more thing, just quickly. So I've been showing it like this, so this is how the light is happening. It's all parallel, like this. So all the light's coming down, and it's all parallel to each other. This is sunlight. This is how sunlight works. So if you're outside, then all the light rays will be coming down parallel. But if it's something like studio lighting or just like a light source, then the light will actually come out like this. It won't be parallel, unless like it's a specific light that makes it do that. But usually, imagine it's like a light bulb or something. All the light's gonna be coming out in like just all around. So yeah, this is sunlight, and this is like a light source, like studio light or a light bulb or whatever. So sometimes when the light source is like really intense, then you'll get like overlighting, so things will be overexposed and really bright. Most of the time it will happen with sunlight because sunlight's really intense. With studio lighting, it's when the light source is really close, because with this kind of lighting, the light kind of, the strength of the light dies down as it gets further away. So yeah, this is like my kind of me trying to make a visual example of it. But yeah, the light's stronger here, and then it kind of dies away as it gets further away. So if you had an object that was like really close to the light source, here, then you'd have the shadow side again, but this side would be like super bright because it's being hit by a really intense light, like that. Same thing with sunlight, but I mean, because sunlight's really intense anyway. If there's like no clouds in front of it, like, yeah, if there's no clouds in front of it and it's just like direct sunlight, then this will also happen in that as well. But yeah, I think that's about it as far as light goes, or my understanding of it at least. So you could take this character here and kind of like add color overlay onto it, add a gradient map or whatever you want to do, refine it, you know, make it look cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all the base I want to cover. So just these main things here is light, shadow, bounce light, cast shadows, occlusion shadows, and highlights. Those are the main things that you want to remember when painting light. So yeah, this was a first. I've never actually I've never just talked and demonstrated things just like on the spot live, so this might be a bit kind of all over the place, and I'm sorry if that is the case, but I do hope that this in some way helped you out. So yeah, I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.